Lena was halfway through folding laundry when Daniel walked in. He didn't greet her. Didn't even glance at the shirts she'd neatly stacked. Instead, he held out a folded piece of paper like it was some kind of prize. "You'll need to sign this," he said flatly. She looked at him, confused. "What is it?" His jaw tightened. "It's just paperwork. To finalize some changes with the house." Something in his tone made her stomach knot. She wiped her hands on her jeans before taking the paper. When she unfolded it, her vision blurred for a second. Then the words came into focus, and so did the betrayal. Quitclaim deed. Her name was gone. In its place, written in black ink as if it were nothing more than a clerical update, was Chloe Bennett. Chloe, his mistress. The woman Lena had only seen in whispers, perfume lingering on Daniel's shirts, texts that must have been a co-worker, and late nights that ran long at the office. She looked up at him slowly, her hands trembling. "You replaced me with her?" Daniel sighed like she was being dramatic. "It's better this way. You're not suited for this life. Chloe is." Her heart thudded against her ribs, but she kept her voice low. "You did this without telling me. I'm telling you now." Before she could speak, there was movement in the doorway. Chloe herself stepped in, all effortless curls and smug lipstick, like she already owned the place. She leaned against the frame, her smile sharp. "Daniel thought it was time for a change," she said, her tone dripping with sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. Lena's throat tightened. The laundry lay forgotten on the couch, soft and clean and meaningless in the face of this cold, deliberate erasure. Daniel reached for the pen on the counter. "Just sign it, Lena. Make this easy." She set the paper down carefully. Easy for who? No one answered. In that silence, Lena realized something. This wasn't about love or even marriage. It was about control. About removing her, as if she were nothing more than a line item on a document. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She only nodded once, like she'd understood something they didn't. Because what Daniel had forgotten, what Chloe had no idea about, was that while the deed to the house could change hands, the land it stood on was hers. Purchased in her name alone, years before they ever built their dream home. And if he thought he could erase her, he was about to find out what happens when the ground beneath your feet suddenly disappears. Lena folded the paper neatly, slid it back across the counter, and smiled. "All right, Daniel. I'll think about it." Neither of them noticed the way her eyes had sharpened, or how her mind was already building the first steps of a plan that would bring the whole house, literally, down. Next, Lena makes her first quiet move, and Daniel doesn't even see it coming. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed beside Daniel, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing while her mind mapped out every inch of the land beneath their home. He had forgotten. That was his first mistake. Years ago, before their marriage, before the house was even a sketch on paper, Lena had inherited 3 acres from her late grandfather. He bought it in cash, old school, and left it to her with a single piece of advice. "Land is power, Lena. Never sell it. Never sign it away." Daniel knew about the inheritance, but never cared much. Land without a house meant nothing to him, until he decided to build one with her. Back then, it had felt romantic, their dream home, a monument to their life together. Now, that monument was nothing more than a stage for his betrayal. In the early morning, Lena slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him. She pulled an old metal box from the back of the closet. Inside were deeds, tax receipts, and most importantly, the original land title with her name in bold, unmistakable letters. She ran her fingers over the embossed seal, the way someone might trace the edge of a weapon they were preparing to use. By the time the sun rose, she'd called Yvonne, a real estate attorney she'd met years earlier at a neighborhood association meeting. They hadn't spoken in months, but when Lena explained, calmly, factually, what Daniel had done, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Don't sign anything," Yvonne said finally. "And whatever you do, don't let them know you're making moves. If your name's still on the land, we can work with that." That was the second mistake Daniel would make. Assuming silence meant surrender. That afternoon, Chloe began bringing her things into the house. Designer dresses draped over the banister, crystal perfume bottles crowding the bathroom sink. Daniel hovered nearby, offering to carry her boxes like some gallant hero. Lena watched it all without a word. She made coffee for herself, even offered Chloe a cup, which the woman declined with a little smirk. Perfect. Let them think she was defeated. Late that night, when both were asleep, Lena sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She combed through zoning regulations, property rights, and tenancy laws. Every page she read was another piece of a puzzle that would make her victory clean, legal, and irreversible. She bookmarked everything, took notes in a small leather notebook, and circled one particular phrase over and over. The right of the landowner supersedes the rights of the property owner in cases of deed separation. She smiled to herself. Daniel thought he'd taken her home away. He didn't realize the foundation beneath it was already shifting. And soon the ground was going to give way. Next, Lena makes her first official legal move, and Daniel mistakes it for nothing. 2 days later, Lena walked into the county records office with her hair neatly tied back and a folder under her arm. She wasn't here to make a scene. She was here to start the quiet clock ticking. Inside that folder were 3 documents: the original title to the land, proof of Daniel's recent quitclaim transfer to Chloe, and a request for notice of land lease termination. It was simple on paper. Daniel had built a house on land that didn't belong to him anymore. Not legally, not in any way that could survive her signature on this form. All she had to do was end the lease agreement that allowed him to keep the house there. The clerk processed it without fanfare, stamping it with a thick red filed, and sliding the copy back across the counter. Lena tucked it neatly into her folder. Once the notice is served, the clerk said, they'll have 30 days to vacate. Lena smiled politely. Thank you. On the way home, she stopped at Yvonne's office. They sat across from each other over coffee while Lena laid out the plan. Yvonne listened, nodding slowly, then leaned back in her chair. This is ironclad, Yvonne said. You're not touching the house. You're not threatening anyone. You're simply reclaiming what's yours. Legally, they can't fight it. Not without buying the land from you. And I'm guessing you're not interested in selling. Lena's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not even if it were made of gold. That evening, Daniel was in the living room with Chloe, laughing at some show. Lena walked past them, carrying a plain envelope. She set it on the coffee table. What's this? Daniel asked without looking up from the TV. Just some mail for you, she said softly. He didn't open it. He never did. Daniel had a habit of letting paperwork pile up until something forced him to deal with it. She went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and listened. 10 minutes later, Chloe's voice carried up the staircase. What does she mean, termination notice? Daniel's laugh was dismissive. Probably just some tax thing. Don't worry about it. Lena smiled to herself. Let him think that. Let him sit on it until the days slipped away like water through his fingers. In her notebook, she crossed out the word Step 1 and wrote in careful letters, Step 2, wait. Because soon enough, 30 days would be up. And then they wouldn't just lose the house. They'd lose the right to even stand on the dirt beneath it. Next, Chloe starts to sense something's wrong, but Daniel's arrogance blinds him to the danger. By the second week, Chloe's tone had changed. She still strutted around the house like she was queen, but Lena caught the flickers, those small, nervous glances at unopened envelopes on the counter, the way she lingered near Daniel when he was on the phone, trying to hear if her name came up. One morning, Lena came downstairs to find Chloe standing by the kitchen window, staring out at the backyard. She was holding a mug she hadn't taken a sip from. Something wrong? Lena asked lightly, reaching for the kettle. Chloe blinked, caught off guard. No, just thinking. The yard's nice. Shame if something happened to it. Her eyes darted toward Lena in a way that made her smirk. Chloe was starting to suspect, but she had no idea what the real problem was. That night, Lena sat in her room with Yvonne on speakerphone. Has he responded to the notice yet? Yvonne asked. Not a word. I think he hasn't even read it properly. Good. That's better for us. But just in case, we should prepare for him to suddenly realize what's coming. When that day hits, it's going to get loud. Lena's gaze wandered to the framed photo on her dresser, a snapshot from the day they broke ground on the house. Daniel had his arm around her, both of them smiling like fools, standing on nothing but dirt. Her dirt. The image didn't sting anymore. Now it just looked like proof. A few days later, the first Real crack appeared. Chloe cornered Lena in the hallway. I know what you're doing, she hissed, too quiet for Daniel to hear from the living room. Do you? Lena asked, tilting her head. You're trying to scare me. But this is my house now. Daniel made it mine. Lena took a slow step closer. It might be your house, she whispered, but it's my ground you're sleeping on. And I decide how long you stay there. For a second, Chloe's mask slipped, and Lena saw the flicker of uncertainty she'd been waiting for. Then Chloe straightened, tossed her hair, and walked away. That evening, Lena overheard their argument from upstairs. Chloe's voice was sharp, accusing. Daniel's was louder, angrier. Something crashed, probably one of Chloe's expensive perfume bottles. She closed her notebook, her pen pausing over the page. Step 3. Let them turn on each other. Every day they fought was another day closer to the deadline. And in just over 2 weeks, they wouldn't be arguing in this house at all. Next, Daniel finally opens the notice and realizes he's running out of time. It happened on a Thursday morning. Daniel was rifling through the pile of unopened mail on the counter, looking for some campaign flyer he swore he'd left there. That's when he saw it, the official envelope with the county seal. The same one Lena had handed him nearly 3 weeks ago. He tore it open without much thought. At first, his brow furrowed in confusion. Then his face went pale. He read it again, slower this time, lips moving silently over the words. Termination of land lease agreement. 30 days to vacate. The paper slipped from his hands and landed on the counter. Chloe, dressed in silk pajamas, wandered in with a cup of coffee. What's that? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for his phone, scrolling furiously. A few seconds later, he was on the line with his lawyer, pacing the kitchen. No, you're not hearing me, he snapped. It's my house. I built it. I paid for. He stopped listening, his jaw tightening with every word. Chloe leaned against the counter. Well, Daniel hung up without answering her. He turned to Lena, who was calmly buttering toast at the table. You can't do this. She didn't look up. I already did. This is ridiculous. You're just doing this to hurt me. Lena finally met his eyes. No, Daniel. I'm doing this to remind you of something you forgot. Before there was a house, there was my land. And I never gave that to you. Chloe set down her coffee. So wait, we'd have to move. Daniel shot her a look. No, I'll fix this. But his voice didn't have the same swagger it once did. It was thinner now, brittle. That evening, Lena overheard another argument. This one more desperate. Daniel was calling banks, looking for financing. Chloe was pacing, muttering about not wasting money on lawyers, and just buying some other place. The cracks were widening. In her room, Lena crossed off step 4, force his hand. The more frantic Daniel became, the more mistakes he'd make. And mistakes were her favorite currency. With only 10 days left, she knew he would try something, anything, to salvage his pride. And that, she decided, was when she'd deliver the final blow. Next, Lena's quiet ally uncovers something that turns Daniel's problem into a full-blown disaster. It was Yvonne who called with the news. I've been looking into the construction permits, she said. Just to see if everything was in order. Lena was sitting at her small kitchen table in the apartment she'd rented months ago after leaving Daniel. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, calm and warm, a stark contrast to what she was about to hear. Yvonne's tone sharpened. Turns out it's not. Daniel's contractor cut corners. The deck out back? Built without a permit. And the extension they added last year? No inspections passed. If the county finds out, they could condemn the property. Lena set down her cup slowly. Condemn it? Yep. And the kicker? Since the house is technically on your land, you'd have the right to order an immediate teardown if it's deemed unsafe. A slow, deliberate smile crept onto Lena's face. This wasn't just leverage, it was a wrecking ball. That afternoon, she drove past the house. Daniel's car was in the driveway, but Chloe's was gone. Good. She wanted him alone. When he opened the door, he looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose. What do you want? He asked, voice heavy with frustration. Lena held up a folder. Just thought you should know, before the county does, that your deck and your little improvements aren't exactly up to code. His eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. She opened the folder just enough for him to see the county records. The missing permits. The failed inspections. You've got 8 days left on the lease, she said softly. But if I file this tomorrow, you won't even get that. They'll order you out immediately. And then it won't matter who's on the deed, because the house itself might not be standing by the end of the month. Daniel's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I would, she said simply. She left without another word, letting the weight of it sink in. That night, as rain pattered against her apartment window, Lena added a new line to her notebook. Final step, make them walk out on their own. If Daniel thought losing the house was bad, watching it turn into worthless rubble would be worse. And now, she had the power to make that choice. Next, the final confrontation, and the moment the land takes back everything. The notice arrived on a Monday morning. Not from Lena. From the county. A bright orange paper slapped across the front door. Unsafe structure, condemned. The words screamed in bold black letters for the whole neighborhood to see. Lena hadn't even filed the paperwork herself. All it took was an anonymous tip to a certain inspector, one who just happened to be doing rounds nearby, and the county took care of the rest. When she pulled up in her car, Daniel was standing on the front lawn, phone in one hand, gesturing wildly with the other. Chloe was beside him, shivering in a silk robe despite the morning chill, her face pale. "You can't just throw us out," Daniel barked at the inspector. The inspector barely glanced at him. "You've got 48 hours to vacate. This house isn't safe for occupancy." Lena stepped out of her car and walked toward them, heels clicking against the wet pavement. Daniel saw her and froze. Chloe's eyes darted between them. "This is your doing," Daniel spat. Lena tilted her head. "I didn't build an illegal deck. I didn't skip inspections. That's all on you." Chloe crossed her arms. "We'll fight this." "Fight what?" Lena asked, her voice calm but cutting. "You don't own the land. And in 48 hours, you won't have the right to even stand here." Daniel's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked smaller, deflated, cornered. She handed him a single envelope. "Consider this my formal termination of the land lease. As of Friday, you and your tenant are trespassing. And I don't make exceptions for trespassers." The inspector cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'll need you to confirm you're the landowner for the record." Lena smiled. "Yes, this is my property." The words hung in the air, final and undeniable. By Wednesday night, the house was dark. A moving truck sat half-packed in the driveway. Chloe was gone by morning. Daniel didn't look up when Lena drove past for the last time. His figure slouched on the porch steps like a man who'd finally understood what it meant to lose everything. A week later, Lena stood on the empty lot. The condemned house was already scheduled for demolition. The air smelled of damp earth and fresh rain. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing it in, the quiet, the clean slate. In her hand, her old leather notebook hung open to the last page. She wrote one sentence in steady ink. "Before there was a house, there was my land. And now there's only me." She slipped the notebook back into her bag, turned, and walked away, her heels pressing into the ground that had always been hers. No house, no husband, no mistress, just the land, and the woman who owned it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.